I got pregnant with my first son and I couldn't be going around with like my photography equipment and doing filmmaking, I kind of started writing more and just publishing online. And then that's how an editor saw my work and was like, oh, do you want to write a book? And I was like, yeah, doesn't everyone want to write a book?
I think Jendella is like the queen of dialogues.
Actually, the very first thing that I ever wanted to be was an author. Like there's that proverb about it takes a village to raise a child. That village, that relationship is reciprocal. It's not just about the village helping you, you have to help the village. It's like a circle kind of thing. So you give and take, and that's what I wanted to show. Like, it's not always going to be easy though. Okay, so my favorite Nigerian meal is
Lovely. Thanks, Nikki. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I love that it's kind of like small and cozy. Hopefully more people join us as we get along. My name is Toby and it's a pleasure to be here. I actually am the convener of the Bask Book Club as well as your host for today. And we started the circle for 2024 in September. And so far, we've had so many exciting authors grace us with their presence. In September, we had Abidare, who is the author of And So I Wrote. And then October, we had the pleasure of Onye Nwanbenili join us. She's the author of Allow Me to Introduce Myself. I think you were around and she can definitely attest to how lovely the session was. And today, which is going to be like our last session for the year 2024, we've got Jendella Benson here with us with our second book titled All That We've Got. And I can't wait to get into the conversation. If you've read the book, then it will be fantastic to, engage and have your take and, chime in with your comments, with your questions as well. And let's see how much fun we can have over the next 40 to 60 minutes, I'll say. And I've got a couple of questions here for Jendella. But of course, like I mentioned, it would be worthwhile to have the audience also come in and ask the questions as well. And to get the session started, I will be kicking off by reading a short bio profile of Jendella for those who do not know. I'm just going to be reading from like the back cover jacket of the book. So Jendella Benson is the author of Hope and Glory and Ed Editorial at Black Ballad, the award-winning digital platform for Black British women. She's written for The Guardian, The Sunday Times, Style Magazine, The Telegraph, and The Independent. A short story, Kindling, was published in the Book of Birmingham, and she was a judge for the 2023 AKO Kane Prize for African Writing. Jendella is a member of the advisory board for the award-winning Brixton-based bookshop Roundtable Books and an accomplished public speaker. I love the fact that this bio talks about the multifaceted aspects of, our author, and it's such a pleasure to have you here once again, Jendella. Thank you for joining.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm just going to dive right into my questions. I'll first of all be kicking off by asking about how much joy like your writing actually elicits. I'll start by saying that I came to the conclusion by the time I turned the last page of this book that I think Jendella is like the queen of dialogues, right? You write dialogue so well and it's so engaging and it makes you keep turning and turning the pages of the book. And I'm also quite fascinated about the fact that, your background in itself is in filmmaking and visual arts. I'm just so curious how you managed to make that, pivot into writing and creative writing as it were. So do you want to share a bit about that, please?
Yeah, so actually the very first thing that I ever wanted to be was an author.
Oh.
Yeah, so I loved The Secret Garden as a child, and I think I read that Frances Hodgson Burnett, she first got published when she was 13 or something. So I was like in year 1, I was like, I'm gonna beat that. I didn't. But so I always enjoyed reading and writing, and I wanted to write a book. But after trying to write my first novel at the tender age of like 8 and not succeeding, I thought, oh, maybe this isn't for me, and I put it to the side. But I think I just like storytelling in general. So that kind of translates across everything that I do. At one point, I wanted to be a war correspondent, and my mum was like,
oh my goodness,
yeah,
daring.
Absolutely not. So I thought, oh, I'll just go into media. And then I studied media at college. I studied graphic design, and then I found photography. And so it feels like it's kind of gone all over the place, but really the main link is I just like telling stories. And when I've always had like an online blog from when I was in secondary school. I actually got suspended from school for writing mean things about my teachers on my online blog.
Do you have like your name boldly written on the blog, or was it anonymous? How did people figure out it was yours?
I put my first name and I put my date of birth. So when they found the blog, they ran the date of birth through the school database, and they first name for. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I've always just written and kind of kept a diary since I was a teenager. And then when I got pregnant with my first son and I couldn't be going around with like my photography equipment and doing filmmaking, I kind of started writing more and just publishing online. And then that's how an editor saw my work and was like, oh, do you want to write a book? And I was like, yeah, doesn't everyone want to write a book? And then that's how Hope and Glory came. So it's kind of like a bit all over the place, but I always say like storytelling is the main thing. I just like telling stories.
Yeah, amazing. So would I be correct if I say that your first love is writing before filmmaking or photography?
Yeah, I think so. I think because even when I was studying art in college, my textiles teacher would say, your write-ups are so good, you should go and study English. Because I was saying, oh, I'm going to go and do like graphic design at uni. She was like, no, go do English. I was like, no, I want to be an artist, a real artist. A real artist. So yeah, but writing is my first love. So it was kind of I feel like I needed to do everything else just to know that I could. And then like, oh, actually I like writing the best. So yeah.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I'm also going to be asking about like your first book, Open Glory. I mean, we're having a quick chat with Nikki before the session started, and she mentioned how, warmly accepted that title as being within, the Guildford Library. Do you want to share the exact?
It's in the top 20 most borrowed books of 2024 at Guildford Library. So
wow. Oh my god.
Congratulations for that.
That's beautiful.
Wow. I feel like a superstar.
We did have a display on first, but this morning we had to take it up. Your book was there.
Oh wow, no, that's amazing.
Beautiful. And I'm just curious about how I always tend to like wonder what the pressure is like for authors to like ride on the success of their debut oftentimes. Did you feel a bit of pressure while you were trying to like put this book together?
I didn't, but only because so I don't know if anyone knows Dorothy Coomson. She's like a thriller suspense author. She's very, very successful. And she said to me, as soon as you finish your first book, just start writing the second book. So I'd actually started working on this before Hope and Glory even came out. So there wasn't any pressure because I was still kind of like writing this in a vacuum where no one really knew who I was or anything about my work. So I think if I hadn't, I would have felt the pressure, because even when you get feedback, even if it's great feedback, you think, oh, like maybe I should do that again. Or maybe I should, I didn't do that in the second book, maybe I should have done that. So I think it was good that I'd already started it, because there was no it was too late. Basically, I couldn't change it.
Interesting. So I guess it's just perfect time to ask why all that we've got. I mean, the themes that you explore in the book are quite heavy, if I just say so. And pardon me, but it was my first encounter with the term counterlines, and those are like sensitive topics or areas that people tend to like shy away from here in the UK. So I'm just curious to know what kind of like inspired you to delve or explore that particular theme?
So my friend actually studying a PhD, and it's in girls and teenage girls and gangs, but like across the world. So it's like internationally. But it's been a theme in her work since I think her MA. So when she was doing her MA, we would sit and we would have these long conversations just about what it's like to be a teenage girl and like our own experiences. And I knew that I wanted to write about teenage girls at some point, because I just find being a teenager so fascinating, even though at the time it feels like the stakes feel so high when you're a teenager, and then you get older and you're like, what was I stressing about? But you remember how big all of these things seemed at the time, and I just found that fascinating. I knew I wanted to write about it, but so it was from there, and then just over time, because I actually had this idea before Hope and Glory, but I was just kind of chewing over the idea, and one of my friends, actually, her brother got kind of caught up with kind of county lines, and that was obviously then tied into my other friend's work with her, kind of looking at girls and their experiences with gangs and that kind of thing. So that all started forming. And then when I was a photographer, I did a project on young mothers, because I have friends who have like had kids when they're teenagers. And I remember there was one of my friends who she got pregnant when she was 19, and she didn't want to have the baby, and she didn't want to be with the partner of the baby, but she basically got convinced to continue with the pregnancy. And then everyone said, well, you have to stay with him because you don't want to be a single mom as a teenager. But this guy was horrible. He was like abusive, and it was just not a great situation. So I started this project, Young Motherhood, just to find out experiences of other like moms who had babies when they were like in their early 20s or in their teenage years. So all of these kind of like ideas were all kind of hovering around, and then I realized that so much of it is about community, like the community that you do have or you don't have. So with young mothers, very much their success, if you want to call it that, depends on their community. It's got nothing to do with their age, really. It's got nothing to do with anything more than what support do they have around them. And same thing, like as my friend is doing this research, and as we're talking, we're realizing that sometimes the difference between tragedy and kind of avoiding that tragedy is who you have around you. So do you have older people who can kind of guide you in the right way? Are your parents emotionally present or just available to talk to? So that was the theme, then kind of like tied it all together, and I thought, okay, I really want to write about this. And especially just looking around and the last like however many years that we've kind of been in austerity in the UK, and just the way that community has kind of like crumbled a little bit, like the infrastructure that maybe was once there isn't there anymore for various different reasons, whether it's just everyone's focused on their individual interests or physically the spaces aren't there. Like I was saying, that I like this library because it feels like such a community place. Like there's all these places that you can go, and there's not a lot of places where you can just be like, where can I host a book club? Like, oh, I'm gonna have to find a coffee shop and work out the pet. Do you get what I mean? So that was the idea. So all of these like kind of separate ideas kind of came together, and I felt like this was the best way to kind of tell that story.
That is so good. I mean, who would have thought like the ideas that kind of like change the world come from the most random places, if I do say so. And oftentimes I think it makes sense to check within your circle. I'm kind of like wondering, is it possible to like delve into like my diary or my circle of friends and see if there's anyone working on like a PhD or research topic that perhaps might interest or inspire like a very great book or something. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And my next question kind of like also evolves around like one of the biggest themes in the book, which is mostly around friendship. And I love the fact that you touched briefly on community earlier. I mean, friendship is like a theme that cuts across every single book that we've managed to, select throughout the circle. I know that was also a very big theme in Onye's book, as well as Abby Diaries. So, I mean, this time around, it's also mostly around female friendship. Why friendship? Was there maybe like an intent behind the reason why you decided to make that like a big theme in your book?
Yeah, I think because people always say it's so hard to make friends when you're an adult.
Yes.
It is. So I guess being like the ages of the two main characters, like early 20s, teenager, like friendship is still very much your world. And it's often where some of the most formative friendships are made. And realistically, you're not going to listen to your mom necessarily as much as you should do. You're not going to listen to the people who've got all of these years of wisdom as much as you should do, but your friends, they're the ones that like have your ear. So I wanted to, it just felt very natural. It felt very truthful to have friends just be such, because like, for better or worse, friends were like my whole life when I was a teenager and even up to early 20s. When you break up with a friend, you feel like people talk about heartbreak and friendship breakup. Oh my god, that is the worst. I'm still mourning certain friendship breakups to this day that happened years and years ago. So I just wanted to kind of also give space and like honor that, because sometimes in literature there's a lot of like romance and all that kind of thing, and with all that we've got in particular, I wanted it to be the friendships that save the day, and I wanted it to be the young girls and young women who kind of save themselves through their friendships and their relationships. So
Interesting. Just want us to delve a bit further into friendship. I think the friendship between Mimi and Abby is kind of like nuanced. The age gap to start with. It's somewhere at the back of my mind. I'm like, what are the odds that the people around you, especially those that maybe like a few years ahead, would have so many things in common with you, and your challenges or some of the situations that you're going through would kind of like resonate with them. So like, was that a very difficult picture or portrait to kind of like put together in terms of here we've got Mimi, who is in her 20s, and then she's friends with a teenager. Of course, there's some of that stupidity in court that she displayed that would almost make Mimi want to like smack her, like, what are you doing? And all that. So how did you manage to weave that together seamlessly? And it looks like, oh yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being friends with, someone who is like a few years ahead of you. Because most people would tend to like refer to that kind of relationship dynamics as perhaps like a mentor relationship or like sisterhood. That makes sense.
But I think that's what it is, right? It's mentorship, it's sisterhood, but just not in like a formal aspect. And when I think about community is also about those intergenerational relationships. It's not just about you having a relationship with someone who's going through the exact same thing. It's the people above you who've lived longer, the people below you who are like haven't lived as long. And I wanted to think about community in this very like 360 way. So it is about like, how do we just choose to help each other? Because I think the thing also is that Mimi and Abby's relationship is intentional, because they have to like Abby is very much kind of like riding Mimi's coattails. Like Mimi is just like, leave me alone, like, or whatever. But Abby wants that connection. And
she longs for
that connection, and Mimi has to choose to reciprocate that connection. And that is what community is. Like, that's what friendship is, but that's what community is. Because the thing about I think we talk a lot about, like, there's that proverb about it takes a village to raise a child. That village, that relationship is reciprocal. You have to choose to be, it's not just about the village helping you have to help the village. It's like a circle kind of thing. So you give and take, and that's what I wanted to show. Like, it's not always going to be easy though, because no spoilers, but as the book goes on, there's certain things that Mimi and Abby do not see eye to eye on, and there's friction between them. But it's like choosing to be in relationship. Like, I feel like these are things that we often talk about when it comes to romance. Like, oh, you don't just fall in love, you choose to be in love. Like, it's the same with friendship, it's the same with community. You don't just happen to fall into a relationship with someone. You have to choose to be in that relationship. You have to choose to say, okay, I'm gonna look out for you, I'm gonna care for you, and I'd hope that you do the same for me.
It's the intentionality for me. I think one of my biggest takeaway from your book is how it's managed to help me define one of the relationship that I have with someone who is a bit younger, and then it's almost like the Mimi Abby dynamics, right? And then there are days when I kind of like struggle with like, okay, so how do I define this? People will ask me like, who is she to you? I'm like, oh, she's my sister. And then they're like, blood sister? And I'm like, no. Like, and then she's your friend. And I'm like, well, I mean, this is someone who is perhaps like 5-6 years younger than I am, but I find out that she's super smart and she just needs people around her, and like she needs that sounding board, and she chose to make me that person in her life. And so being able to like define that and find a name for it, or even go with the flow and decide that, you know what, necessarily does not have to have a name. The most important thing is that you both choose each other, and you're choosing to, you know, be there for one another, because at the end of the day, family, friends is all that we've got, that sense of word. Pretty much love that bit about your book. Okay, so I feel like I've been waffling and been talking a lot, and it'll be great to kind of like hear from the audience. But while the audience are still like putting together their thoughts, I'll kind of like quickly talk about one of the characters that really stayed with me. He almost seemed like someone you can literally dismiss. I think it's Mimi's son, Micah. Micah is so adorable. I could almost put a picture of what his mannerisms, his thumbs up, but no spoilers. But I just thought like Micah is super, super sweet. I'm just curious to know what kind of inspired this character and what were you trying to achieve him. Because the first question perhaps would be, is he on the spectrum? Because that seems to be like
I mean, that was quite, so my youngest, who's 5 now, he definitely inspired some bits of Micah, because he was very like non-verbal, like he wouldn't talk to anyone, he wouldn't make eye contact, he was very much like, who are you, don't talk to.
And interesting how maybe wasn't even bothered, like it's fine, he talks to me, that's okay.
But that's kind of how I took, because I was like people were like, oh, are you concerned? I remember at his nursery one time they were like, oh, do you think he might be on the spectrum? And I was like, let's give him a bit more time, because he's only like 2 years old, you know. And like now he will not stop talking. Wow. He will not stop talking. So I think that he definitely inspired Micah in a sense where some of the mannerisms definitely came from my youngest son, but also because I think that Mimi is quite, because of what she's experienced, she's quite closed off, which is how she kind of is to Abby in the beginning, and she's quite a bit got her back up a little bit, but I wanted to show her care, like the love and the care that she has within her, and it made sense to show that through like obviously her son and how she cares for her son. And also because, you know, again, there's so many ideas that people have about like young moms, like, oh, they're irresponsible, they're this, they're that. Another thing is that there's a high percentage of like teenage mothers who have children. The father of the child is actually a grown adult, which isn't spoken about, especially within the UK. I think now like birth rates amongst teenagers are going down, so we're not talking about it as much. But when there was like the big teen pregnancy, babies having babies, no one was speaking about the fact there's a significant percentage of these young girls who have been impregnated by grown men. So that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I just wanted to show, you know, like a young mom just trying to like figure stuff out for herself, you know, trying to be responsible, managing to be a responsible mom, but still like trying to figure out who she is and what her life's gonna be. Because I think that's something that a lot of moms of all ages can kind of relate to. Like when you have your kid, you're kind of like, okay, okay, who am I again? Like, what does this mean for my life? Like, you can spend so much time focusing on bringing up this child, but you're thinking, okay, but what does that mean for my work? What am I going to do now? Oh my gosh, I feel this way about my body, or I feel a bit depressed, but I can't really focus on that. I have to focus on my child. So I wanted to also just show that complexity of being a mom, but through meaning.
Beautiful. My next question is one I always ask every guest. It's mostly around what your writing process is like. I'm like, okay, this seemed like a book that relied heavily on research. Like, what shape or form that research took, we hope you get to share. But off the top of my head, I'm just curious to find out, like, what was that process like for you? Was it a case of after you chart or conversation with your friend who was pursuing like a PhD around this particular topic, you then decided to like map out keywords or topics or themes that you wanted to explore, and then began to like flesh that out, or you just let the story take you where it would, so to speak. Or I also felt like the characterization was also like very, very good. It was spot on. And beyond just the protagonist, there were so many characters in the book that would tend to like stay with you. There's Raphael. I really hope we get a chance to like talk a bit more about him. But yeah, great to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
Okay. Secrets of the trade. So whenever I have an idea, I literally just, like I said, I had all these like disparate ideas, and I literally say chewing. I'm just thinking about them over a course of months, and then a bigger picture kind takes form.
Yeah.
And then when I have an idea of, okay, so this is the story, these are kind of the initial characters, this is where I think it's going. I then I'm not someone who just goes and just writes. Like, I have to have a plan. So I'm kind of like plot out, okay, this is where I think the story's going, and then I just try and write the story. It's very terrible, horrible, rubbish draft. It doesn't make sense. The names of characters change a million times, so that when I'm going back through, I'm like, who's that again? Oh, that's that person. Okay. So I kind of write that all down, and then when I kind of know where the story's going, then I do my research. So even in that first draft, there's loads of bits where I'm like, research. I don't know what this bit is. They're gonna go here. I don't know what here is. Research. But I leave that until I've kind of got an idea. Because otherwise you can find yourself just researching endlessly, researching all these other different ideas. Oh, maybe, and you never use it. So I have a first rough draft, I know where it's going, and then I go away and I just do my research. So a lot of the teenage stuff was very like first hand. So that was like my experiences, my friends' experiences. But when it came to kind of the county line stuff, that's when I started to just go online, look at like charities that work with young people. They have like what they call white papers and like stuff that people have put together about the county lines phenomenon. So I read through that stuff from like police reports about what's been or how they deal with it. So that was what I did. And then when I kind of take all of that information, then I work out, okay, but what do I actually need? Because it's very easy to just blurt it all and then I learned this, and then I learned this, and it's like, that's got nothing to do with the book. So then I like put it in, and then after that I'm just like redrafting it over and over again, and just until it feels like, okay, now I can send it to my agent, and then she can tell me where it's rubbish and I need to go back. But as for like the actual practical writing process, I have a full-time job, I have 2 children, so it's not like I can go away to the mountains and like write for a weekend. So literally I feel like I always need to have a running start, so I need to be thinking about it during the day, and then when I realize, okay, this is what I'm gonna write, then I literally just take out my phone, quickly type it, and then I transfer it all at the end of the day into like the full document. It's not very glamorous. It's just very much like, but one thing that I found recently is that it's really hard to find even the time, and I was actually getting quite depressed recently because I was like, I'm not writing at all, because I'm working on the next book. I'm not writing at all. So Dorothy Coombs again, I'm gonna keep. So even someone like Dorothy, we have this relationship where she is so much more experienced than me. She has written like 21 books, a best-selling author. She's much older than me, but I guess we have almost like a mentor relationship, but it's not a formalized mentor relationship, because it's not like every second Wednesday we're gonna sit down and have a chat. It's more just like I send her a message like and then she might get back to me that day. It might be the next day because we've all got lives. So she literally, when I told her that I was having problems with this book, she just sent me a message. She said, "How's writing?" And I was going, "It's crap." So we had a conversation. She was like, "Just write 20 minutes every single day. Just do 20 minutes a day." And I've been doing that more recently, and it's amazing how you can build up writing. You think, "Oh, I need to have everything and I need to have all this space." But if you're like, "Oh, 20 minutes, let me just do it so that when she asks me, I can say it's done." And again, it's on my phone because that's the easiest thing. Literally everything that I write starts off on my phone. Because otherwise I just won't, like, my kid's complaining that he needs to do his maths work and he needs to use my laptop for the maths. Like, there's always a reason why I can't get to my laptop. So if I do it on my phone, it's done. And then I can just copy it over. So literally I'll be like, okay, 20 minutes, fine. That, like, usually I try and do it in the morning because that's when I actually work best. But if it gets towards like the end of the day and it's 9 o'clock and I'm like, just write something, 20 minutes, and it could be absolutely rubbish, but I've written something and I've got something to work on. And I don't know who said it originally, but there's like this quote: the real writing is in the rewriting. Because your first draft is always going to be terrible. So you just have to have something so that you can rewrite it. It's a lot easier when you have something there. It's hard with a blank page. So that's my very unglamorous writing process.
Beautiful.
But if I can do it, it means anyone else can. That's basically.
I love your comment when you walked in about how you so much respect anyone that's been able to like write a book. So I'm glad you're taking time to like share the tips on how you manage to make that happen.
If you have a phone, go ahead to write.
That was so inspiring. And my next question is kind of like tied to the previous one, which is mostly around how I felt like, I mean, you an editor, like, does that make the work of like writing your own book twice as hard? Did it make you overtly critical about your own writing, or overwhelm you with some kind of perfectionism, if that makes sense?
I think because I edit non-fiction and I write fiction, there's a bit of a separation there. So it does make me a lot more critical with my own work. So I'm very much like kind of like, okay, does this sentence do the job that it needs to do? No. Like, I'm very kind of like harsh in that way. Like, I will just chop stuff out. Because I'm like, better I do it than I send it to my editor and she does it. Because one thing that I have found is that it's ironic that when my fiction editor sends me back fiction notes, I always react the same way. Like, I'm always like, oh my gosh, she hates it. This is so bad. I can't write. Because they'll send it back and it'll be like, it'll say like 3,000 comments. And I'm just like, so basically delete the whole thing and start again. And so I'll always do that, even though I know from being an editor that it's never that. Like, I know consciously that when I send back edit notes to writers, it's not because I'm thinking, oh, this is terrible. It's because I'm thinking, this is great, let's make it better. But the writer side of my brain is just like, oh, where is me? So it does impact it in some ways, but then in other ways, I'm just still very much a writer who is very much in love with their own words and needs someone to tell them, maybe change this.
Thank you for being honest. Lovely. Questions?
No pressure.
Let me drink my tea.
Go for it.
I've got one just there's whole sections of kind of what I call street language that I was like, what the hell does this mean? How'd you learn that?
It's even better when you listen to it on Audible. Was quite a lot to catch up with.
The audiobook is amazing if people like audiobooks. So I think it's like osmosis, right? It's like another language in a sense where this is stuff that I hear people talk around me. So it's almost just like writing in another language. But then the thing that I find hard with it is that I don't want it to be completely impenetrable. So it's like writing enough slang so that it feels authentic.
Yeah.
But not so much that someone who doesn't speak in this way is kind of like completely like, oh my gosh, I have no, let me just skip that whole page because I don't know what's going on. So yeah, I think it's always a bit of a balancing act. It's like a tightrope, and I literally read, when I'm redrafting, I read everything out loud. So I've read this book out loud so many times, which is when people say, oh, are you going to do the audiobook? I'm like, absolutely not. I'm over it. But yeah, so it's kind of just, and I think I just look at it as the same as like another language. So even like there's like little bits of like Yoruba in there which aren't directly translated, but hopefully there's enough around there for the reader to get the context. And even if you don't know exactly what was said, you kind of know the gist, the flavor based on reactions or the rest of it. So that's kind of how I view it, just like as another language. How do I give enough that feels authentic without it being like needing like footnotes underneath?
Yeah. I found myself going on Google multiple times.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my
Because
God.
there were so many of them I just couldn't make sense of. And Google sometimes got it wrong as well in terms of the meaning, and then I probably had to have like slang just to provide a bit of more context, and the responses I get is a bit more guided and all. So
and because like slang is a language that's constantly evolving, so even like certain words meant something once upon a time and now they don't mean that, or in certain places that word means that but in another place it means something different. So it's I think I actually find language quite interesting in that way. Like I studied English language in college, and I was such a nut. Like, you know, everyone talks about, oh, I love literature. Forget the literature bit. I was like, let's get into the language. Like, let's talk about syntax. And
that was me. It started my first degree was in English and semantics and syntax, stylistics, and
let's do it. Like for the next book that I'm working on, I'm like, I am gonna slip a transcript in there somehow. I don't know how. I'm gonna put transcripts for all the language nerds.
Beautiful. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that question. I'm hoping to more questions. Who else has read all that we've got and would love to have Jendella, or maybe any other questions from all of the conversations,
any other questions
we've had so far?
We can have a chat about anything.
I've got more questions, by the way, but just leave it open.
Where did you get the inspiration for Deanna's character?
Oh, Deanna. So she was from research. So I know a young person who's in care, but I didn't want to write their story because it's not fair. So kind of jumping off from them, I just started doing like a lot of research around kids who've had kind of like care experiences, and because they are often the most vulnerable when it comes to things like county lines. So I was just doing research around what they kind of go through and using the person that I knew as like a starting off point to kind of think, oh, they once said this about their social worker, let me go and dig a bit deeper. So that's where Deanna came from.
Very fragile character, isn't she?
Yeah, she is, But and again, it's like that whole thing that, what I always say is that the biggest difference that we have with other people around us is just choice and circumstance. So Deanna's just a teenage girl who has been put in a very unfortunate circumstance because she's in care. And then she makes some questionable choices, but that could be literally any teenage girl who's put in that same situation. So she's a tough character, but she's somewhat like she's quite close to my heart anyway. Because that I know so many girls that could have been me. I know so many girls who that could have been as well.
She really resonated with me. I used to do some voluntary work with a charity that did Christmas event for children people who were care experience and care leavers, So it was kind of like, yeah, I can see, I've seen patterns of that kind of emerge. So
And
Yeah.
they're so forgotten about, like
Oh,
so
God.
completely. But I know that recently there's been kind of like this talk, but it's quieting down, I think, but about just that whole care system and how you have like private companies making so much money off of looking after kind of children, and they're not really have their interests at heart. So it's something that we definitely need to just have more in mind for just society as a whole.
And they're often blamed for being in care.
Exactly.
It's like, what did you do to get put in care? I've heard that question before. And it's like, I don't know, my mum died.
It's,
you know,
it's
crazy.
it's crazy. It's tough, but what they also learning, like from their experiences, if they have the right support, they are so much more worldwide. They have a resilience. They have kind of just skills that, unfortunately, because of the situation, they've been forced to pick up. But it's just, again, it's having the support. It's having the right people around them, people who care about them, who are able to put their interests first and kind of just deal with them as kids, not as like troubled kids or kids with baggage, but just as kids.
Quite heavy, yeah. Now that we're talking about Diana, a bit more empathetic towards her, because I mean, there are times when as humans we just get caught up with how in reality, and we're just so not in tune or in touch with what's happening with other people. And that's one of the beautiful things about books, like it just opens you up to like so many new stuff that you probably aren't aware of before now. And this book actually did that for me. I mean, there's so many things that you touched on that when they're like, oh my god, you're so naive. I'm so like, what is this? What's she talking about? Is this what some teenage girls go through in, like, you know, making me interested in it, like step out of my own bubble, like explore, be a bit more kind and gracious to people, despite their upbringing or circumstances that are out of their control. So yeah, thank you for sharing the spotlight on that. Next question.
Okay, yeah. So I like to talk about Ralph.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's one character that you did very well with. I suspected from the outset that it was a shady, very character.
Yeah.
But it was nice that you sustained, the suspense. You didn't get to see who he was until Abby began to, think about him, and then, it unraveled, at some point. And so I thought that was really excellently done. It was a very impressive thing. But I would like to speak about what exactly you are trying to say about religion, about Christianity. It's a very heavy theme in the book, and it recalls in so many places. So sometimes it looks like, the point you are trying to make is about the hypocrisy, of the church. But isn't there really something that the church does, to set the teenager, right, to lay solid foundation, for good conduct and good behavior, and bringing people up in the right way?
Yes. So I grew up in the church, and I think it definitely diverted my path away from misfortune on various occasions. Like, for example, I didn't drink as a teenager just because I grew up in church, and so I was always the sober friend when all my friends were like drunk and doing chaos. I was the one dragging people out of roads and trying to keep everything on track. I probably still shouldn't have been there, but at least I was there to kind of, stop things going completely awry. So I think that the thing that I was concerned about with the church is that hypocrisy, is kind of the cult of personality that can plague churches, whereby you have characters like Prince, who was it's a bit of a spoiler if you hadn't read it, but Prince, who's like a youth pastor, who kind of gets a carte blanche to kind of do whatever, be whatever, and so it wasn't really, I wasn't trying to take aim for the church as an institution, more kind of like a certain attitude, because even with Mimi's mom, she has a very, when she first kind of hears about Prince and like the other youth leader, she has a very dismissive kind of attitude, and I've seen that happen, and it's like that's kind of what I was kind of aiming for, because that's the thing that damages community. It undermines community when we don't have kind of like when we have an attitude that kind of allows certain people to be above others in terms of how they act and like how they're held responsible. So that's what I was trying to kind of, I guess, highlight, the things that undermine community. And I think that attitude where, you know, you have some people who are above others, or there's a cult of personality around a certain person within the church, that is the issue. So yeah, but I mean, the book stops in a place where there isn't maybe a wider reconciliation with the church. So I can see how it can feel like, oh, is this kind of like anti the church in that way? But I mean, I still go to church. Like, yeah, I'm hosting the Christmas social tomorrow. So I'm very much, church is definitely a place of community, is definitely a place of support. But there are certain things that if we allow to take root, it undermines all of that. And it's no longer a safe space, which is why Mimi had to leave, because she didn't feel safe in that space. So unfortunately, she felt like, I have to leave my whole family. And I'd hope that we can have these places of community where that isn't the case, where if someone does, I don't know, do something that we don't agree with, whether it's pregnancy out of wedlock, whatever it might be, where there's enough compassion that we can at least see them as a person and kind of come to them and be like, oh, rather than them feeling the judgment and the weight. Because again, like, I've been in churches where you have a young woman who gets pregnant and she's dragged up in front of the church to account for why she's pregnant, and it's like, well, where's the person that got her pregnant? She didn't do this by herself. Like, there is no immaculate conception. She didn't do this by herself. Where's the other person? But she's the one that's in front of the church, kind of explaining, I had sex. You know, like, so that's kind of what I was.
Which was why Mimi actually had to leave the church. I think our concern was more that, was more about the fact that if she revealed the identity, you know, it wasn't. I don't think she was so much concerned about herself as to how much it would, how much the society. Okay, well, I mean, if she said it was a prince, for instance, the community would have blamed her. You know, so make excuses for, which was actually what happened. That's what what's the name of the auntie that she went to see? Auntie Moyin was trying to make excuses. So you eventually put the blame on the girl. You know.
And it, unfortunately, it still happens. It still happens where, and that's, I wish it didn't, and I wish we could just be more embracing and allow people to literally come as they are.
Single mums are shamed everywhere.
Never
mind, you know, and within the church is just one place where that is, you know. It's a wider situation, isn't it, as well.
It's just that you imagine that the church will be a place where we accommodate people. You know, because the essence of Christianity itself is to bring people closer to God, not drive them away. So you help sinners, not drive sinners away. But what we do in the church most of the time is to judge them and push them out of the church, like they did to me.
That's really interesting. And very topical with the whole Church of England kind of scandal recently.
Yes.
It's like when you don't listen to people.
And that's I think that is the thing. You have these hierarchies in place, and all of a sudden the original function of the church isn't functioning as it should. Because even like when you, sorry to delve into like my theological, but even when you go back to kind of the original church in like biblical times, they were kind of like flat hierarchy. There was no like levels of hierarchy. There was just like a group of people, deacons, elders, who would oversee the admin of the, but everyone was on. But now we have all these hierarchies, and that is actually what makes them really unsafe, because now we have to protect one person above another, and it's like, no, we're all meant to be brothers and sisters, we're all meant to care for each other. But yeah, oh gosh, yeah, did not foresee that happening.
Yeah.
When I was writing.
I mean, I feel like there were subtle hints at hacktivism in the book. Yeah, and call it what you may, but I think this was one of the elements for me, how it felt like you were subtly nudging readers to be that voice of truth and be that person that speaks up even at the face of, injustice, at the face of circumstances that are just not right in that sense of the word. I wish the church had extended more grace to Yemisi, Mimi. I wish that our family, especially our mom, could have provided that psychological safety for her to. I mean, she tried it in her own way. Maybe it's part of the challenge that there's always that huge gap between generations.
Yeah.
And, it's always quite difficult to reconcile and see things from the perspective of the fact that things are fast changing. This is the reality of the person or the other. But yeah, good stuff. So many things and topics to like unravel. Go on. Yeah. You wanted to say something?
No, I mean,
just,
I mean, there is also the Nigerian thing, for instance, the two ladies happen to be Nigerian, Abby and Mimi, by some, well, I don't know, coincidence. Maybe, or maybe it was deliberate, was there something you were trying to say about, these two ladies, different circumstances, but came together?
Yeah, I think I'm always gonna write about Nigerian British characters because that's me. But I think I just wanted to show different kind of family circumstances. So Mimi is actually from quite a middle class background, while Abby is in a completely different situation. Again, that's based on kind of vaguely based on a real situation I know where someone's father was essentially deported, and then that's created a single parent home where otherwise there would be two parents. So I wanted to definitely show kind of that, just different experiences, because I feel like often even just when we talk about the Black community, like we're all kind of like lumped together. There's very different types of people within this community, and even the Nigerian British community, there's very different kinds of experiences. So I just wanted to have a different like flavor of life, basically, just to show that we are all in this together, but we all come from very different backgrounds, and when we are coming from these different backgrounds, we have to find a place to meet in the middle, but it is still possible.
Was there also a subtle attempt to suggest that the deportation of her father, the absence of a man, of a father in Abby's life, may have contributed to, some of the things that she was exposed to?
So I think with that, it was just the financial position that her mother was put in. She is in a situation where she's working long hours away, and this happens in homes up and down, and even when there's that thing called working poverty, right, where you have people who, even if you have two parents who are working, but because they have to work such long hours, ends are not meeting, and children are latchkey children who are kind of just left to their own devices. So I think it was definitely his deportation put the mother in a position where she's trying to provide in very tight circumstances, and that does mean that Abby's left to herself a lot of the time, and also unfortunately Abby feels that financial pressure, and being a teenager she thinks, oh, I can help out.
What was she thinking?
I can take things into my own, because she's a teenager, and teenagers have that amazing hubris that makes them think that they have the secret to life that the rest of the adults haven't found yet. Saying this as a teenager who thought that. So yeah, that's really what it was, just that financial position that Marie finds herself in, because that is the case. Like, I think they talk about, oh, the benefits bill. I think outside of like pensions, like a big percentage of the benefits bill goes to working people who need to have their wages topped up because they're not earning enough to keep up with the cost of living. So yeah, that's what I really wanted to show.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's time for you to like read the next chapter of the book for us. So I will just leave you to choose the page.
Okay.
Let us know so we can read along with you.
Let me see which page. I think I'll just go from the beginning, because I've never read from the beginning before. But I think it's. Should I go from the beginning, or
can I suggest?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I was hoping you could read page 349.
Oh, this is quite. Is there gonna be spoilers? No, I'm joking. I'm not being.
Not quite yet.
Okay, 349. Okay. Oh, okay. This is so this is Mimi kind of reconciling with her parents. I think this is just before her father's birthday party.
Okay.
349. And I will start. I'm trying to find a good place to start. Okay, I'm gonna start from near the top. Yemisi, how are things going? Her father asked her with a smile, his booming baritone paving over the relational cracks. They are fine, Dad, just fine. Micah is growing fast, doing well. Mimi reeled off her spiel, but wasn't sure how to end it, because the "I'm just taking time to enjoy motherhood" line would not work on her parents. Moyen is concerned that you have not got back in touch with her after your initial discussion. Was it not a fruitful conversation? This was it, on to the serious topics, but her father kept his tone jovial. Auntie Moyen has some interesting ideas about what I should be pursuing. I don't think we see eye to eye at all. How so? Her mother was fussing over Micah, but she stopped to pay attention to Mimi's response. I am not interested in nursing, plain and simple. That can't be the only career out there for me. And I'm certainly not interested in being pushed to attend some singles conference or deliverance service or whatever you thought she could convince me to attend. Singles what? Her mother leant forward and frowned. Singles conference, you didn't know? Her parents exchanged glances. What singles conference? Her father asked in an even tone. And Mimi took out her phone to show them the latest invitation that Auntie Moyen had emailed across. Restoration Conference, the green and gold flyer declared in garish 3D type. Underneath, the strapline informed that this conference was about restoring what the locust had stolen, and then it listed the maladies that it aimed to solve: divorce, miscarriage, heartbreak, premarital fornication, pornography addiction, unwed motherhood, and barrenness. Her father took the phone in his large hands and frowned deeply. Her mother impatiently angled the screen in her direction. Hey, she exclaimed, clapping a hand on the table. Sister Moyen. Mimi looked between the two of them. I don't understand. I thought you knew about this. That's how she ended our meeting, telling me to get back to church to find a father figure for Micah. She did what? Her mother's face was hardening with disdain, and for once it was not aimed at Mimi. I sent you to Moyen to find out about your education, not so that she can try and marry you off as if you had a sell-by day. Mimi felt herself begin to thaw, relief replacing the fight response that had been on standby. I will talk to Moyen myself, Bisola concluded, and she turned back to fussing with Micah. Oh my days. Mimi sighed and relaxed into her seat. Auntie Moyim was really applying the pressure with those messages, like having an illegitimate child is some kind of incurable disease. Hey! Her mother covered Micah's ears. Don't talk about your son like that. Olorun Maje. Mum, you can't forbid what has already happened. I had Micah outside of marriage, but it's not like I called him a B word. Her mother clucked her tongue and shook her head. I know how the aunties at church talk about these things. I know how you've talked about these things. Mimi stared directly at Bisala, but her gaze was not returned. I know that me refusing to talk about who Micah's dad is has been an issue, she continued tentatively. It was, her father replied frankly, but the truth of the matter is that if this man knows that he has a son, which he does, am I correct? Mimi nodded. And he has not done the honourable thing of stepping up to the plate to be responsible of his own accord, I do not consider him someone worth fraternising with. Mimi chuckled at her father's word choice. And is Omushe the first child to have a wastrel as a father? He'll be fine. But any man who thinks he can leave his child to fend for himself and it will be well with him, ha! Her father clapped his hands. But Omushe is not left to fend for himself, Abby, Mimi's mother corrected her husband. Ah, God forbid, of course not. The waiter returned with their drinks and set them down on the table. Are you ready to order? He asked. I will have the ogbono soup with fresh fish and meat with amala, and for my wife, please, do you have bitter leaf soup today? When I came last time, the kitchen said there was no bitter leaf and I was sorely disappointed, her mother lectured in the tone of a teacher reprimanding a naughty child. Yes, ma, we have bitter leaf today. We thank God. I will have the agusi and bitter leaf soup with pounded yam. Of course. The waiter wrote down her mother's order with a flourish and looked to Mimi. And for you? I'll have jollof rice with goat meat, plantain, and moi moi. Dad, are you paying? Mimi asked, knowing the answer already, but still waiting for him to incline his head in agreement. Great, I'll take the lamb suya to go as well. You can just bring it in a takeaway for later. Her dad chuckled and shook his head.
Oh, so good. Yeah. Wow. I wanted you to read that part because of wanted to allude to some of the very not so pleasant role that Auntie Moyi played in all of this. And as a Nigerian or an African as well, I don't know if it's just peculiar to our culture only, but we all always have those nosy relatives or nosy aunties.
I think
it's everywhere.
I think everyone has the nosy auntie.
Nosy auntie who would never mind your business and they're all up.
Yeah.
And the weird part is, for many of them, it's not like they're having it great in their marriages too, or in their lives, and they just choose to project their insecurity or their experiences to like the younger ones and all of that. So I'm glad that they got a real estate in this book and you called them out. So thank you. Okay, so my next question is around what you're most likely going to be exploring next in your book. Because it just sounds like you deviate from the norm. I love how authors these days are very audacious about the topics or the themes that they explore. It's almost like every author is taking to heart the saying that if there's any kind of book that you'd love to read and you haven't found it out there, just go ahead, explore that topic, write about it. So what are you writing about next?
It's a bit controversial.
Okay.
No, so it's actually kind of taking the idea about the personality. I don't like the issue of personality within the church, and it's taken that a bit further. So it's not set in the same world, but it's set it's set in a youth revival service.
Okay.
And there's a young charismatic pastor at the center of this youth revival service, and it's basically told from different angles of congregants who are at this service, and that they're all experiencing the same thing. But there's a question as to the intentions of this pastor. Like, is he leading everyone in the right way, or is he allowing his own hubris and pride to muddy the waters a little bit. So that's kind of what I'm working on at the moment, which I'm finding very hard because, again, like, it's something that I feel is quite important to address, but it's quite a I feel a bit apprehensive because, again, I don't want people to think that I'm coming for the church and I'm coming, but I feel like, you know, if anyone's gonna address it, it should be someone. It's better that it comes from inside than outside. You know what I mean? It's better that someone who is inside the church and understands can address the flaws rather than someone outside who maybe doesn't understand and doesn't really care about the wider community does. So, yeah.
Can I interject?
Please do.
I'm not a defender of the church.
Yeah.
But I think that people see these things. They happen. You know, these hypocritical, dispositions and all of that.
Yeah.
What I think is critical as a writer, I do a bit of writing myself, is I think that it's important to balance things.
Yeah.
So that while you are showing, the very negative things, that you shouldn't see in the church, but you are seeing, you also let your readers see that it's not everyone, not everybody is like this. So you still see the people who represent the church in the real sense of the church. For me, as long as you do that, people can,
But bad stories sell more. That's
it will.
of course.
But what I'm saying is that
I want to write a book that talks about
the book that you're talking about, people are also able to see a reflection of the true church.
And so I think that's where the interesting thing is for me.
Yeah.
Whereby I always say I don't believe in villains. I don't believe anyone is an outright villain.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. Everyone has some redeeming quality.
Yeah.
And even in all that we've got, that's what I was trying to show through like Raphael. Like, if Raphael was just an outright villain, Mimi wouldn't be attracted to him and there'll be no reason for the story even to take place. So I don't believe in outright villains. And I think that for me, and because maybe in all that we've got, the church was more like a secondary narrative, so there wasn't as much time to kind of delve into those nuances, which I guess is why for this third book, it is the main, because there are so many nuances. There's good, but there's bad, and then there's also the bit in between where you're not really quite sure 100%, is this on the up and up, is this questionable? So that's kind of what I'm interested in, and particularly not even the church as a whole, but specifically through the idea of the people that we elevate. How do we interact with the people that we elevate?
Is it set in Nigeria?
No, it's not. It's not. It's set
because there's a peculiar. You talk about the people we elevate.
Yeah.
There's a very peculiar. Well, maybe the whole of Africa actually, the way we elevate leaders of the church is incredible. I mean, I'm not sure. They're untouchable. So that's why I asked if it's set in Nigeria.
No, and I think it's something that we do here as well, and especially kind of like growing up and going to from a Nigerian background, going to church, you still see the same. It was interesting when I then started going to kind of other churches, and like you can just call the pastor by their first name. I agree, you can't call the pastor just Mark. It has to be Pastor Mark, Apostle Mark, Bishop. So it's very interesting just how that cultural, because I think that comes from like this culture of respect that is so heavily embedded. Like, you have to respect your elders, you have to respect the people, but then some people abuse it and they use that as I said, like a carte blanche to just do whatever they want, and you can't touch not my anointed, you can't question me, you can't do, and so that's kind of what I want to explore in that setting, because it is set in the church, but it's not just about the church. I think it's just about a wider culture of accountability and how we hold people accountable.
Great.
Can I just, I mean, you're talking about, again, I've never lived in Nigeria, my father has for a long time ago, but I think the cultural differences thing is kind of really interesting as well. There's have you ever heard of this guy called Hofstadter who's done these cultural studies, and he's looked at countries around the world, and there's 5 or 6 cultural dimensions like power distance, and where authority plays more importance in some cultures than others, or masculine, feminine, or the collective versus self, and all these things. And it sounds like in some cultures, I mean, the UK is relatively low on power distance, where it's not a hugely hierarchical culture compared to some others, and we're more than others, of course. That's just quite an interesting dynamic, and when you overlay it into the tendency to elevate people in certain, in certain environments anyway. I mean, we have it in different settings. So you think about rich business people like Muhammad Al Fayed. They become untouchable. And they can pay themselves off.
Power imbalance.
Power imbalance completely. So it happens in it's not just a church thing. It's a societal thing that we do. And at what point does that happen? And they, either can pay people to stay quiet, or it's too scary to challenge. And is it and then when the institution is held above the individuals, which is what happened at Harrods. And what happens at the Church of England.
There's a list.
And I think that's, and in order, I think that the story that I'm writing it could be set in any one of these places. It's just that the church is the place that I'm most familiar with, so it's kind of easier for me to do it there. But anyway, still kind of on an early draft with that, but
When will you publish that? I'm interested in the timelines of these things.
So usually from when you kind of sign, it takes 2 years. So I haven't actually signed for that book yet. So it could be any 2026 onwards. It takes quite a long time. But
and the to and fro with the editor from the moment you've issued your first draft or your first draft you're comfortable with the editor see, how long is that?
I think it could, so I think usually from I'll say 3 to 6 months maybe. So there's all these different stages. So you send it over to the editor, and then there's what they call kind of structural edits, which are major stuff. So it might be move this part of the narrative to here, move this part of the the big changes. And then when that's kind of settled, it then goes to a copy editor who kind of goes through it and is more almost like the fact checker. So it's well, technically this couldn't happen because the timeline, they get into all of that. And then after that, it goes to a proofreader who then makes sure that the words are on the page in the right way. So I think that whole process with those, so you end up having 3 editors. So you have your main editor, and then you have your copy editor and the proofreader. That's probably about 8 months from it's like having a baby.
Goodness.
Thank you for sharing. I've got a few quick fire questions here.
Okay.
Just helps us get to know the person behind the book, and of course, we know your flesh and blood. We've got blood flowing through your veins, but great to get to know you a bit more. So, Pappy, you've attempted to answer the first one earlier on, but are you a morning person or a night owl?
It's funny, I'm a morning person as long as I don't have to talk. So I can get up from 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm very active. I just don't like interacting with people. So I'm a morning person in theory, but I'm not very sociable. But as soon as it hits 8 o'clock, please, where's my bed? I am ready to be asleep. Yeah.
Who was your favorite character to write in all that we've got?
Oh no, that's too hard.
Does any come close?
I really enjoyed writing Abby.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to mention Mimi.
No, obviously, I love them both.
Okay.
But no, I enjoyed writing Abby because I just liked being a teenager again. I just so I had all these diaries from when I was younger that I was reading through, trying to get into that mindset.
Yeah.
And it was just fun to just kind of, inhabit the world of a teenager.
It's interesting that you say that because that part of my life or that phase of my life is one I don't even like to remember. I don't want to be in touch with it. Just like made some very slow decisions and choices.
I thought that until I started reading back my diaries, and I was like, I've had a lot of fun. But you kind of, I think it's called negativity bias. Like you remember the more negative aspects. Like I hated school so much. So when I used to remember being a teenager, I would just remember how much I hated school. But then reading through my diaries, I was like, I was having the best outside of school. I was having a great time talking about all the boys I fancied, cringe, all like the parties. And I was like, this was great. So yeah, that was fun.
I'm gonna do something unusual. We've got a teenager here. Did you manage to read the book?
I finished it.
Okay, but for what you read, did you think that Jendella managed to do justice to the character Abby, or did it mirror your experience as a teenager, frankly?
I think it did. To be honest, I think okay, I didn't finish it. I wasn't a chapter about it, but I think Abby is a nice character. I think like she's someone that I would meet at school or something like that. So I feel like she's relatable, not me, but to people. So yeah, I think.
Thank you. Stamp of approval.
Great. Okay, so next question. Maybe it's an obvious one though. What's your most used productivity writing tool?
The notes app on my phone. Literally, if you open it now, you'll see a half-written chapter. Then it's the notes app.
Yeah. Great. And therapy is what to you?
Ooh, I think therapy is vital. I've been in therapy, I think, 3 times.
Yeah.
I think once in couples therapy. No, actually twice in couples therapy, and then twice as an individual. And I think it's so important. It's not something that you have to. I mean, it depends on where you're at. Some people are in that. Like I have a friend who's been with the same therapist for 5 years, but for me, it's very much like when I'm going through something, kind of like blocks.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's vital to have that space, and yeah.
And your favorite food? I saw a bit about Nigerian jollof, lamb suya. What else?
No, this isn't fair. What's my favorite food? Okay, so my favorite Nigerian meal is efforiro with amala.
Okay.
That's my favorite Nigerian meal. Outside of that, I feel like my favorite. I really like Japanese food. I really like Japanese food. I kind of can, eat sushi, noodles, dumplings. Like,
Okay.
yeah, I've never been to Japan, but I'm sure I'd have a great time.
Have you been to K-drama as well, or?
You know what? I'm not into K-drama.
Are you?
But in my defense, I don't watch a lot of TV.
Okay.
I don't watch a lot of TV, so I don't think that I've given it enough of a go. Yeah. So yeah, but I feel like because it's quite dramatic, right? It's a bit like soapy and I like those kind of like, is it telenovelas, that kind of like drama. So I'm sure I would like it, but I need to give it a chance.
Beautiful. And second to the last question, what does success look like to you?
Okay, so before I was thinking like, oh, you want to hit the bestseller list. I want to get flown around the world to talk about my book. That happens to like 0.1% of authors. But finding that out was a little bit like it's not me. But now I think that I've come to the conclusion that success, this sounds so cheesy, but it's literally being able to talk about my book. Like doing something like this is like amazing, because it's like I wrote this book, this world existed in my mind, it's now in a book, and I'm talking about it with a bunch of people that I've never met before. Like that is amazing. And I think that ultimately, when I go back to why I do what I do, why I story tell, why I like telling stories, it's to connect with people. So yeah, it took a while to get there, but yeah.
Yeah, we're glad you're there. I mean, kind of made it easier to get you to join us today to share about the world of your book. So final question, what are you currently reading?
Ooh, I just finished God Help the Child by Toni Morrison, and Toni Morrison is probably my favorite author. But whenever I read one of her books, I find it hard to read something else after, because she is like the pinnacle to me. So I just need a little bit of space to so I just finished reading that this week, and I'm still kind of thinking about it and listening to interviews of her talking about it. So I'm still very much in that space at the moment.
Would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think God Help the Child, that was her last book before she passed away.
Yeah.
I don't think it's one of my favorites of hers. My favorites of hers, my absolute favorite is Paradise.
Okay. Sula.
Oh, I love Sula. Sula, Paradise, and what was my third one?
Beloved?
I think I liked Beloved, but I think it was a Mercy actually, those are my three favorite books: Sula, Paradise, and a Mercy. But to be honest, you could start anywhere. But Paradise, I think, is my favorite. But sorry, I'm talking on and on and on because I can talk about Toni Morrison for ages. But reading Beloved actually made me rewrite the start of this book, because I read the first page and I was like, yeah, the first page of my book is not good enough, I need to go back. And if you read the first page of Beloved, it's just it just makes you think, what the hell, I need to read the rest of the book immediately. So yeah.
Beautiful. This has been really profound. Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing.
you. Thank you for your question.
A huge round of applause for Jendella. Thank you for gifting the world with all that we've got. It's a book that we definitely highly recommend, and I hope the book actually gets into more people's hands, and I can't wait to read what you've got next. We wish you big success in your writing career.
Thank you.
Going forward. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you everyone for joining. We've got copies here, and I think Jendella is also happy to sign some copies if you looking to grab one or two. And it's been wonderful doing this year. 2024 has been such an interesting year, if I to say so. We hope to be back in 2025, but we want to close this circle off by saying a big thank you to the Surrey Libraries for hosting us. Thank you so much, Guildford Library, for lending us your space. It's been an absolute pleasure doing this and shining the spotlight on some of the most exciting books written by authors of African descent. Right, so we'll come your way again next year. I want to wish everyone the most amazing Christmas. And December, it's literally starting off tomorrow, and I hope you